My name is Dado, and now we talk about matching colors from one LED fixture to another. Even with the utmost care, there are still some common misunderstandings and some minute divergences that may need to be taken care of. The most common misunderstanding that we encounter is between our monocolor LED lights and our bicolor LED lights. With the monocolor LED lights, we try to stay as close to the standard expectations, meaning that our tungsten LED lights should be very close to 3200 Kelvin in color temperature, and our daylight LED lights should be as close to 5600 Kelvin, because those are the values that everybody expects. But with our bicolor LED lights, we tried to give these the maximum range of adjustment. Therefore, our bicolor lights can be adjusted all the way from approximately 2700 Kelvin up to beyond 6000 or even 6500 Kelvin. Now, this huge range of color temperature adjustment allows the user to adapt the color temperature setting to most ambient lighting situations simply by turning the color adjustment knob. Now, the common misunderstanding may arise when somebody first sets up our monocolor light and right next to it one of our bicolor lights. And he then turns the bicolor light to one end of the scale. Then obviously the lowest color temperature setting on the bicolor light with 2700 Kelvin will definitely not match, and is not even intended to match, the 3200 K of our monocolor lights. Similarly, when you place our bicolor lights side by side with a monocolor dedolight in daylight version and adjust the bicolor light to the highest color temperature, it is not supposed to match. And you will see a distinct difference between the approximately 5600 Kelvin on our monocolor daylight as compared to our bicolor light in the highest color temperature setting. So what do? You simply turn the Kelvin adjustment knob on our bicolor light until you achieve the best possible match. Now we talk about color temperature versus delta UV. When we're talking about color temperature, we're talking about color coordinates that all find themselves in positions along the so-called Planck curve. The Planck curve is the so-called black body curve. Imagine you take a black piece of metal and you heat it up. And at some stage you may feel warmth being emitted from this black piece of metal before you see any visual change. Heat it up further and you will see a dark red glow. And as you heat it up further, this dark red glow will turn more into an orange value. And then finally, you reach our artificial denomination of tungsten light, which we have set at 3200 Kelvin, which again is nothing else but 2927 centigrade, because Kelvin is only a scientific expression of centigrades starting at minus 273 centigrade, the absolute zero. Now, as you heat up your black body source even further, more and more blue will be added to the color until we reach the designated color temperature called daylight at 5600 Kelvin. In real life and in nature, there's very rarely ever daylight color temperature at 5600 Kelvin. It may rise a lot higher depending on the position above sea level. It may appear a lot higher when you're considering daylight as it comes from the blue sky and you're in a shadow area. It may drop down a lot depending on air pollution or the position of the sun, the time of the year, and your position on the globe closer or further away from the equator. Similarly, the so-called studio color temperature of 3200 Kelvin is often a myth. There are light sources, lamps, which are supposedly providing 3200 Kelvin. Quite often, those lamps don't live very long to make the studio manager happy. So lowering the supply voltage of these lamps by 10%, you can extend the lifetime up to 4 times. So that is often the practice. And as you lower the voltage on a halogen lamp, the color temperature will drop down to 3000 Kelvin or even lower. Furthermore, the light fixtures within which the halogen lamps are used may have slightly dirty lenses or deposits on the reflectors, which again will lower the color temperature. And in most studios, you will see that many of the studio Fresnel lights will be fitted with a diffusion material attached to the barn doors. Most of these diffusion materials, again, lower the color temperature. In other words, don't expect studio color temperature to be anywhere near 3200 Kelvin. Usually it is quite a lot lower. Still, working with lights that provide color coordinates, which find themselves on the Planck curve, this is the most desirable modus operandi. Why? Because moving away from the Planck curve upwards, you add green, and going below the Planck curve, you add magenta. And both of these colors influence in a pretty detrimental way the rendition of human skin tones. If we want to simplify the statement, we may say that deviations in color temperature, meaning that we move along the Planck curve, are less perilous to skin tone rendition than the deviation above or below the Planck curve. Because green and magenta are killers for skin tones. They make human faces look unnatural, sick, or even make them look like horror pictures, while slightly warmer or cooler color temperatures are much easier to accept and may still leave a halfway decent impression of the skin tones. Even with the utmost care, the light emitted from LEDs may not always be equal from one LED to another. The reasons are that the perfect phosphor mix, which determines the color, is not easy to control. And also the application of the phosphor onto the LED, be it directly on the LED or in remote phosphor systems, is not perfectly controllable. We take extreme care to have all of our LED light sources as close to matching each other as possible. Still, some minute differences are so far unavoidable. In order to put this into some sensible relationship, allow me to point out that also with metal halide light sources, which some companies have called HMI, they have rarely ever been perfect color matches. Even from the same manufacturer, even with the same wattage, even from the same production batch, there were quite noticeable differences when firing up new lamps for the first time. And as they grow older, they behave quite individually. And they change their light output. They even change the size of the light source, depending on the process called devitrification, where the glass envelope around the electrodes changes its consistency. And also, of course, their life expectancy varies wildly. It does not only depend on how many times they are ignited and shut down, but simply because they behave very, very individually. So this has never been a perfect science, never anything that was totally reliable. With our LEDs, we tried to come as close as humanly possible at this time to perfection and guaranteeing a perfect match. Here we need to know that when a huge quantity of LEDs is manufactured, those are then sorted by machines according to their color characteristics and thrown into little buckets called bins. This process is called binning, and the bins have been standardized by the American National Standard Institute, ANSI, ANSI. Everything that is allocated to one single bin should be pretty much the same color in both directions along the Planck curve, as well as in delta UV, the deviation into green and magenta. The best that LED manufacturers can offer these days is a selection of bins that are close to each other, neighboring. So we might get a group of 4 bins in one shipment. In order to allow and guarantee a color match from one light to the next, we identify the relevant bin number for each individual light and imprint it on the technical information next to the serial number of each individual fixture. Now, let us say, for example, there are in a studio already 20 lights installed, and another 10 lights are to be ordered. Then we ask to read out the bin identification so that we can provide the next lights with an identical bin. I think this care is not taken by any other manufacturer, but we try to do this as best as possible. Now we talk about color maintenance. Now this refers to what happens with the color coordinates as the light source is used for many hours. Changes of color coordinates depend not only on age, but also to a large extent on the operating temperature. When an LED light source reaches 85 centigrade, it is in grave danger to lose color consistency and light output at the same time. When an LED light source gets to 100 centigrade, it simply dies, because the bond wires of the LED chips open up and the light is no longer functional. In order to prevent such dramatic incidents, each of our lights is equipped with a thermosensor, which will switch the light off before any such damage occurs. In normal operation, this should never occur, because our cooling system is supposed to keep the operating temperature, even in continuous use, below these critical values. So this is just simply a safety precaution meant to avoid damage under extreme conditions. Still, some changes in color are to be expected over prolonged lifetime. Again, depending on operating temperature, and this operating temperature may again depend on the fact whether the light is used intermittently, like for most mobile teams in interview situations, or whether it is used continuously at maximum power for many hours each day. If such lights are used continuously, but not at 100% light output, this will prolong the lifetime, as well as the color consistency, considerably. Since we continuously conduct long-term tests with our lights, they're being left switched on continuously for many thousands of hours, we track the changes that may occur. Here, we found that our tungsten light sources, after many thousands of hours, may change color temperature just a little bit downward. Thus, possibly after 8,000 or 10,000 hours of continuous use at maximum output, the color temperature may have dropped by approximately 100 Kelvin. On the other hand, our daylight light sources, after such prolonged tests, can show an increase of color temperature of maybe 200 or even 300 Kelvin. Now, the great bonus that we seem to have achieved with our light sources is that even with these shifts in color temperature, we do not encounter any significant changes in delta UV, i.e. in the deviation from the Planck curve. That means that over a very prolonged lifetime, under the toughest conditions, there's no magenta and no green added to our lights. That, in our opinion, is the most important aspect. For our bicolor lights, the changes over extremely long times of usage, even turn into a benefit. The range of adjustment from the lowest to the highest color temperature gets even a little bit bigger than it was on the first day when you bought it. Next, we talk about longevity, lumen maintenance. How long will LEDs last? How long are they useful? And how soon will they degrade? About the lifetime of LED light sources, you read all kinds of promises. Sometimes it should be 50,000 hours. Some are even more courageous, stating and talking about 100,000 hours. In reality, and in our profession, that does not seem to hold true. Again, the lifetime of an LED will be greatly influenced by its operating temperature. Of course, the operating temperature may be considerably higher when an LED light is used over many, many hours continuously, which will allow it enough time to reach higher temperatures, in comparison to circumstances where the light is only used for short periods. Furthermore, it is important and of influence whether the LED is used at full power. If the light is dimmed, it will not reach the same temperatures and will live considerably longer. Nobody, no LED manufacturer, nor manufacturers of LED lighting equipment will give any warranties for life expectancy to the extent often found in Internet specifications. Lumen maintenance. How long will it take until the light output of an LED will decrease noticeably? We talk about lumen maintenance. For example, the term LM80 defines the time span it takes until the light output is decreased by 20%. Nobody will really give reliable figures concerning such issues, and nobody gives any guarantees. One thing is sure, the lifetime of an LED light source under normal working conditions, however those may be defined, is considerably longer than that of other light sources in the professional world. Although some HCI discharge lamps have been rated with a life expectancy of 12,000 hours, by that time it is also to be expected that there will be some degradation of light output with LED lights. In general, you can figure that when you use an LED fixture over 5,000 and maybe over 10,000 hours, you may have to expect a light loss up to 20%. The light loss could also be considerably more under higher continuous operating temperatures. We just want to make you aware that the expectancy of having such a light perform useful functions over many generations may not be fulfilled. Light output from LEDs, the rating in lumen per watt for good LEDs with good or even perfect color is not as high as you would expect. But then it also has to be taken into consideration that with LED light sources, most of the useful light is emitted in one direction, forward, whilst many other professional light sources, be it halogen or metal halide light sources, will disperse their light in a circle. And that quite often leads to substantial losses of effective light output. Thus, even if the useful light output of an LED may be rated as low as 60 lumen per watt, the actual light output within a fixture can show higher efficiency than with many of the traditional light sources and fixtures. Therefore, the power consumption is lower, and in mobile lighting, the lower power consumption makes battery operation quite possible. This can be seen as one of the distinct advantages offered by LED technology. Summary. With our LED light sources, we have reached color quality that may not be surpassed in any foreseeable future. It appears that we have reached the maximum possible regarding color quality. light output and efficiency. Here it is to be expected that LED technology will offer higher light output in the future, but so far progress in this direction has been relatively slow. For mobile operation, the fact that many of these systems can be powered by batteries can be seen as one of the distinct advantages. In conclusion, it may be said that although not all of the fabulous expectations placed in LED technology are fulfilled yet, and it may take a long time until significant improvements are made beyond what we have already achieved regarding color rendition. I'm Dado, and about some other aspects of LED lighting we'll talk in our other videos.